Senator Edward Moore Kennedy, a giant of American politics and the Democratic Party, and the patriarch of the Kennedy clan, has died. He was 77 years old. It happened just before midnight East Coast time at his home in Hyannis Port on Cape Cod. Ted Kennedy is survived by his wife, the former Victoria Reggie, his three children, Kara, Ted Kennedy Jr., and Congressman Patrick Kennedy, his two stepchildren, Curran and Carolyn Racklin, and his first wife, Joan Bennett. Ted Kennedy was the third longest serving senator in the nation's history, representing Massachusetts since 1962. He continued his family's legacy in public service despite many personal and public tragedies. As ABC's Charlie Gibson reports, he rose above it all to become his family's rock and a liberal champion.
It is the glory and the greatness of our tradition to speak for those who have no voice.
He was the liberal lion of the Senate, and arguably the most important American lawmaker of the 20th century. Ted Kennedy was just 30 years old when he first won the Senate seat formerly held by his big brother John.
I pledge that I shall dedicate all of my strength and will to serving you in the United States Senate.
For only 11 months, the three Kennedy brothers served in Washington together. John the President, Robert the Attorney General, Edward the Senator. Until Dallas, 1963.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. There has been shooting.
People now grief-stricken outside the hospital upon learning officially that President Kennedy had been shot dead.
Within a year, Ted Kennedy would have his own brush with death, barely surviving a small plane crash. And then in 1968, there was another assassination. Bobby Kennedy killed while campaigning in Los Angeles.
Is there a doctor in the house?
My brother need not be idealized or enlarged in death beyond what he was in life. To be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it, saw war and tried to stop it.
Ted Kennedy's public display of strength was followed by unwanted headlines. After a party in Martha's Vineyard, his car plunged off a narrow bridge on Chappaquiddick Island. Kennedy swam to shore, but his passenger, Mary Jo Kopechne, died.
This morning I entered a plea of guilty to the charge of leaving the scene of an accident.
Chappaquiddick would haunt him the rest of his life. Still, in 1980, Ted Kennedy tried to fulfill what many saw as his destiny. He ran for president, mounting a primary challenge against incumbent Jimmy Carter. A campaign remembered most for the words that ended it.
For me, a few hours ago, this campaign came to an end. For all those whose cares have been our concern, the work goes on, the cause endures, the hope still lives, and the dream shall never die.
Kennedy then rededicated himself to his work on Capitol Hill. He was always a champion for the underprivileged, for education, health care, civil liberties, and his critics would say, for old-school liberal spending. His later years brought more personal troubles and another family tragedy.
I am in Hyannis. I've been here obviously through the weekend because of the plane crash that has apparently resulted in the deaths of John F. Kennedy Jr., his wife Carolyn, and his sister-in-law Lauren.
But also another moment in the sun. Right before Super Tuesday, Kennedy's endorsement lent credibility and momentum to the Obama presidential campaign.
It's time again for a new generation of leadership. It is time now for Barack Obama.
Kennedy's diagnosis with a brain tumor in May 2008 brought out his fighting spirit. He was back on the Senate floor just weeks after surgery, and he electrified the country by making a surprise appearance at the Democratic Convention, where he echoed his famous rallying cry.
The work begins anew. The hope rises again, and the dream lives on.